Happy New Year to you all. It is 2025. It is also 25 years since The Sims actually released. This will be the 11th year of The Sims 4, and unfortunately, with no Sims 5 in sight, with no successor of the franchise on the horizon, I was kind of scared, not gonna lie, to ask you lot what you wanted from The Sims 4 this year. However, it seems that a lot of my personal wants and wishes from my own wish list align with what you lot want, which I'm not surprised about, let's be real. You lot who follow me on socials where I post about hearing the wish list obviously do consume my content, and so it kind of makes sense that we have some crossovers. The overall sentiment was absolutely no more packs, refresh the old ones, and then also continue with updates. Don't release any more packs so that they can focus on bug fixes. I kind of want to go over all of these in general because I also agree. I don't think that they're gonna stop releasing packs, and I also don't agree with the stop the updates because it's breaking my mods and custom content, because how do you expect this game to get any better or actually introduce what players want if it's not being updated? Mods have always been secondary. They've always been made not by the developers, so if they're knocked out with updates, that's not really the team's fault. I get how it can be aggravating, especially if they update it so that a mod is knocked out and then the modder might not be creating mods anymore. Maybe they're not doing updates, so you do feel like you're missing a core part, but also at the end of the day, those updates are what are allowing them to actually make the game better and hopefully get the rest of these ones into the game. Pack refreshes with updates rather than putting more stuff behind a paywall. I can absolutely agree with this. I still stand on the hill of, I think Spa Day was such a weird pack for them to do a refresh on. I don't know if refreshes will ever come back, but I know that Simmers have some great ideas for what they would want when it comes to refreshes. I have my own personal wants of packs that I would like to be refreshed, systems that I would maybe like to add to the base game. Which one of you did say cross-pack compatibility fixes and more systems made base game so that when new packs come out, they can use them instead of inventing new systems to fight with the old ones. I know exactly how you feel. I felt that when it came to the dates that were introduced with Lovestruck. Now it just feels like we have two different types of dating systems if you have base game or then if you have Lovestruck. Actually just making that Lovestruck date in base game and then having the option to expand it over time with different packs that came out. I feel like this is one of the biggest downfalls of systems in The Sims 4 anyway, and it just feels like the biggest double standard, because why is it that Get Together obviously introduced the club system, and every single time we get a new pack, given it's not everything that I would like to see is included in that pack in club activities and things that I would like Sims to do, but a lot of them are carried over. And yet for lifestyles, obviously that was tied to Snowy Escape. The date system, like I've already spoken about, isn't really cross-compatible all that well. It just feels like they have an idea for one thing, but then holidays in seasons are just completely forgotten about, and there's no cross-compatibility between traditions that you can do. What the heck is this double standard? It's so weird. Maybe it's just that one is easier to code and add into the others, but I think the work needs to be done behind the scenes to actually open up those systems way more and have them more playable for all players. If you're spending thousands upon thousands in this game, I would expect those core systems to also be updated with the thousands of pounds or whatever your currency is also reflected in those gameplay mechanical systems. Speaking of refreshes though, something that took me by surprise, honestly, because these two definitely wouldn't have been my first choice for pack refreshes, but a lot of people were talking about a Get to Work refresh, which I kind of get because obviously it was the first expansion pack that we got. More people just want more active careers, like a firefighter career. They kind of want the careers that we got in The Sims 3 Ambitions, which I do get. And I've also said I would love to see more rabbit hole careers. I feel like we have such a weird choice of rabbit hole careers, considering I feel like they're so easy to add. add. Maybe 2025 should just be the year where I go absolutely ham on mods and just like fully customize my game the way I want to. But then also outdoor retreat. So many people said that they wanted an outdoor retreat refresh, and I don't really know what they would do. A lot of people were just talking about making like the lakes swimmable, which is a thing that they have done in later packs, but they haven't gone back and really looked at those in older packs. I've also said that I would love to have like more of the bug spawners so that herbalism wasn't completely tied to Granite Falls, but you could add those bug spawners like around in different worlds. Maybe they could add like scout trips to it if you have the Sims 4 seasons. I would like maybe cross compatibility between those two, but really trying to think of what else they could add to outdoor retreat, I'm not too sure. I'm going back and working on older packs and making them more playable and adding more gameplay and like things that people have wanted to see in the game for a while could only help the game thrive more. And I think this is such a big sentiment because we know that The Sims 5 isn't coming. Like, there's not currently a plan for the successor of The Sims 4. They keep saying that there's many years to come and much more content they want to put out for The Sims 4. One, not only is that introducing like more bugs and more glitches every single time we get an update, but it's also just adding onto stuff that people aren't really loving anymore, where I think if they went back and added stuff to those older packs, that would then lead to more success in the future. And I don't really understand why it's not happening. That's another thing that was mentioned an awful lot is bug fixes. Take a look at what needs fixing in the games, issues with Cupid's Corner. Honestly, there are a ton of bugs out there. I'm seeing bugs in my game that other people aren't seeing. I know that that is always a difficult one because each computer is different. The way people play games is so completely different from one another. Some packs introduce some bugs for some players. It doesn't obviously affect other players, but I think the big bugs that are actually stopping people from playing their game are the major ones that should be fixed like soon as. I also think that there needs to be more in QA and also the bug teams. I do feel like they are on their way to doing that. Obviously, they do now have like that dedicated team who are working on laundry list, but I have to say I haven't been fully impressed with the laundry list. I feel like a lot of them are very small, but again, I'm not seeing like every big issue that other players are seeing. They're not seeing what my big issues are, and I say that in quotations because everyone's big issues are different depending on kind of how you play the game, what you're currently interacting with. But I do think that more money and time and team dedication needs to be spent on QA for new releases, not breaking everybody's games, and also bug fixes in general. I usually don't include people's names or ats when I do stuff like this, but I will say, you know, something is an issue when a modder gets in touch with you and is like, this is what I would like to see in 2025, because even though I'm one of the best modders in this specking community, I also cannot fix this. And it is for Sims to not be able to drop out of their queue interactions I tell them to do, unless there's a fire or they're dying or something extra serious. This and like simulation lag, like the waiting around, or even just those like silly little idle interactions that they do. But the thing is, I don't mind idle interactions. I don't mind them doing something that relates to their emotion or relates to their trait or anything like that if it is an idle animation. But so many times in The Sims 4, they just completely interrupt your flow. They completely interrupt what you're actually trying to get your sim to do. And those idle interactions, I feel like cause a simulation lag, because then you're like trying to tell your sim to do something, and then they're like, wait, I have to do this little silly quirky animation. I'm just in a silly goofy mood. And it's just like, why are you doing that when you could be doing something important? If those happened like when I didn't have my sim queue to do anything, yeah, fair and valid. You know what? Go for it. Don't just plop them in the middle of a line of interactions that I've tried to set up. But I've noticed more and more that my Sims have been dropping out of interactions, and it's so annoying. And I'm not a coder. I don't know anything about the Sims 4 code or like how it looks or how it actually is played. I'm assuming this person who suggested this very much does, because I feel like they play around with the code a lot. But if there's a way to stop that, please add it in 2025, because I'm sick of it. And this is what I mean. I think the core game, like the core coding and like how this game is actually played, needs such a good look at for this game to go on for the years and years that EA apparently want it to go on for. Because all of the problems are just being more and more exasperated as time goes on, as players get like more and more used to seeing them within their game, and people are gonna drop off. People have been dropping off, which is like fine. I'm always the type of person who's like, play whatever life simulation game, play whatever game you enjoy. Like if Sims 4 isn't bringing you enjoyment, then don't play it. I do still get enjoyment. That's not to say I don't get absolutely infuriated by this game a lot of the time. Onto the more pack-based ones, even though I know there's a large crowd who are like, stop adding packs, like we don't want packs. Cars, I don't want to rely on imagination when traveling. I want to see my sim open the door, back out the driveway. Why is that so difficult? I hear you. I want to see it too. I want cars to be the way that they were in The Sims 2. I think cars and fixer-upper cars was such a nice hobby for Sims to have. It could also be a side hustle where they could do up cars or add modification to cars, make them look different, and then sell them on for a nice little profit. I just think cars, a mechanic career, all of that could actually be quite fun as either a game pack or a stuff pack. And no, I'm not one of these people who are like, we need open world to be able to have cars. I don't think we do. Sims 2 wasn't open world, and I loved the Sims 2 cars. I think teenagers could like learn to drive on a little track or maybe in a little car park. Fairies. I was so certain they were happening this year. I'm going to apologize for that one. I feel like that may have been my fault. I feel like ever since growing together, we've had like hints that fairies are going to be happening. I was extremely convinced that they were going to come in 2024, and I fear I may have convinced some of you lot, which, can I just say, any of my like wish list videos or my hint videos aren't to get hopes up. They're just to like have some fun and read too much into probably what aren't hints, but I like to think are. I personally love supernaturals in The Sims 4, and I would love a fairies pack. Although I will say I want them to have distinctive personalities. I want them to have like Seelie and Unseelie courts. I want them to have like evil, mischievous fairies as well as like the do-gooders. I feel like occults have been kind of lacking that recently. Two of my most wanted packs are superheroes and villains and space exploration. Heroes and villains could add a super sim occult, could probably utilize the Fane system from Get Famous. Lots of ideas that could work here. I kind of like see the appeal of this, but I personally don't think I would play with it all that much, although I know a fair amount of simmers who would absolutely love a pack like this. I know Iron Seagull would absolutely love this idea, so I'm not gonna like yuck anyone's yum. I personally just don't think I would get loads of use out of it. I do think that the seasons being electrocuted like twice over by lightning, when you start getting like the lightning flashes, look sick. So I do think that superheroes and supervillains could look cool. I also think this could kind of tie into like the heist pack that they talked about in a survey. And then space exploration, again, not really one I'm like super fussed about. Into the Future wasn't my very favorite. I did like that you could go and visit like your relatives from the past or the future. That was quite fun, but I didn't really play with Into the Future. It just wasn't my type of gameplay. Can live on distant planets. We already have Sixim in The Sims 4. You obviously can't live on it. The moon or space station, maybe meet new types of aliens different from the ones we normally see. I say this about like a zombie pack as well, like an apocalypse pack. It might not always be for me, but I do think that it would be really cool. Also, why did I just sound like a clicker whilst I was talking about that? I always enjoy seeing people's proposals for packs that have never really been done before, because when people ask me, like, what's the thing that you would love to see in the game that's never been done before, I feel like I always really struggle with coming up with ideas. I know this wasn't an unpopular opinions video, but this feels kind of unpopular. I would love a My First Horse stuff pack. Horses have nothing and it's not really fun to play with them. I agree Horse Wrench, atrocious. I don't think it's a good pack. I think that they could have added so many more things that would have made that pack way more playable. Being able to maybe hire horses or unicorns for birthday parties, that is something that you can play with using your imagination. Love how much we have to use our imagination in The Sims 4. After 10 years, it's really, really fun. You also can't like rent horses, so you physically have to own a horse. You can't just like rent one from Sierra, who like basically runs the stables in Chestnut Ridge. Most things were a rabbit hole in this pack. It's a glorified game pack still in my eyes. Does any of that mean that I want an additional pack on top of it to add to it? Absolutely not. If anything, it should have a refresh. However, I would be happy with them never touching horses again. This next one is something that I have always mentioned that I'm not really too fussed about, and it's hotels. I did really like in Island Paradise in The Sims 3 that you could run your own hotel. I thought that was extremely interesting. However, I think if we ever get hotels in The Sims 4, I don't think you'd be able to run them. I feel like they're just going to be lackluster. They're basically just going to be like a spin-off of For Rent, and we all know how buggy that was from the get-go. I would kind of want it to be like Dine Out, but in way more depth and not as broken as Dine Out, obviously. But it seems that it's still a really big want from a really big part of this community. Another one that I know a bunch of people want that I could not care less about, and that is preteens. I'm sorry, I just don't have a want or a need for them. I usually play on a normal or a long lifespan, which means as my Sims are going to like age up from a child to a teen, I kind of have them get into interests that I feel are more like preteen-esque. And then when they are a teenager, as soon as they've aged up, they kind of continue those like habits and those hobbies and interests. And then I have them kind of like slowly either kind of transfer those hobbies that they enjoy into more clinical, like educational job approaches, or I have them kind of forget about those hobbies and get into something else. So maybe it's just because I use my imagination when it comes to filling in that gap of preteens. I just think adding more life stages into the game at this point in time would just lead to them forgetting to add clothes to them in Create a Sim. Infants, I'm looking at you. I just don't think preteens would add all that much. They just feel like slightly taller children, and I feel like that's why most people want preteens, is for the fact that height sliders don't exist in The Sims 4 and teenagers look a little bit too like adult for them. I doubt we're ever getting it because we have like 2 school packs. I still really want boarding school and private school. It can be off lot like Sims 2 and 3. I just want options. Why has this not been added? Like, it could literally just be a rabbit hole. It's probably because they're like, oh, I guess if a Sim is naughty, we probably shouldn't just ship them off to boarding school. Anyway, I think that you should be able to decide to send a kid to boarding school. I think it was Sims 2 that I'm thinking of. Like, if they start getting like bad grades and they start acting out, then their parents can decide to send them to military school, or their school can send them to military school. And I unfortunately don't think I screenshotted this one, but you should be able to send kids to like play centers or daycare. I also think that they should be able to go on like holiday without their kids like we had in The Sims 3 Generations, and teens should be able to like host teen parties and have absolute like rages. I miss that element of family life. I would love the option to like homeschool kids so that you could maybe just like do homework with them. You could teach them certain skills, and it could be an interactive thing that you could do at home alongside a daycare career that I would love to be active in the home, like Sims 3 Generations. I know you're all cooking up a nasty nightlife pack. We can hope and pray with a gorgeous city, world band, singers, rappers, concert venues. You lot know I am dying on the band's hill. I want more musical instruments. I want to be able to like go on a world tour. I want to ruin the world tour. I also know you've got a sports related pack with separated skills. I've talked about this before, the fact that swimming is just part of fitness, and it feels like a lot of things are to do with fitness when they could be like their own separate things. And new careers, we definitely need more sports careers. We also just need more sports equipment in general. We don't have a ballet bar, we don't have the pull-up bar, we don't have like small weights for our Sims to work out at home. You have to have like a dedicated gym area for your Sims home, which is just ridiculous. But the world with African inspiration, we're gonna eat good. I want all of this. This comment, it was like, you you peered into my brain and were like, okay, let me pull out that sports pack that you've never spoken about, because I feel like it wouldn't go down super well, but it's personally something that I would love. I would love to be able to become like a cheerleader, go to sporting events, because that's just something that you can barely do unless you visit Britechester. Maybe even if you're in university, you can only go to it. Having a bunch of different careers. Like right now, we just have like the athletic career, which is just so open-ended and just feels like ridiculous. I would love to become a professional athlete. I have so many headcanons for like townie makeovers that I've done where I'm like, well, if we had this as a profession, I could imagine my sim being in that profession. But when it comes to the African inspiration for worlds, this needs to happen. This needed to happen years and years ago, and it still hasn't happened. And I don't know why it hasn't happened yet. It just feels odd that it hasn't. I want my West African inspired worlds. It's long overdue. I can only say yes, it absolutely is. And also reach out to more BIPOC builders for new worlds. I completely agree. I really think that we need to start switching up the representation when it comes to worlds, and then also for them to collab with a more diverse pool of builders. They have been moving this way, but it needs to continue, and definitely need to add more BIPOC simmers to that pool of creators that they work with for builds. Also, a ton of people were also mentioning Caribbean worlds, and I also think that is overdue for sure. I've also seen a lot of people mention nostalgia recently, and I think I would love it. So a lot of people want to bring back newspapers, landlines, more old things like video recorders, for example. But my biggest wish, but unlikely, medieval spin-off with lots of DLC. I don't think a medieval spin-off is going to come, but I know that people have been talking about a royalty pack, and I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe got one in 2025. It's not on my own personal wish list. It's not a theme that I have really any interest in whatsoever, because I think it's just going to feel so out of place in The Sims 4. However, I did love The Sims Medieval, but that's because it was its own game with like loads of lore and loads of depth and loads of detail, and I just don't think they'd get that in a Sims 4 expansion pack. More kid-to-kid interaction. I miss kids feeling like they're just being kids in The Sims 4. Like, they have void critters and kind of that like Pokemon element where they can battle each other, and I do feel like that's a very underutilized object for a lot of simmers. But I was thinking, we don't just have like things where kids can like run around and play together. Like, we don't have Tig, we don't have hide and seek. We do have snowball fights, but they're literally the most boring snowball fights. They all just stand in one place and basically just throw snowballs at each other. We also have catch if you have, I think it's Discover University with the American football, but we don't have it with just like a tennis ball or anything. Trampolines, pool games, like there's so much stuff I would add activity wise, especially like a football net, a volleyball net, maybe swing ball, like just things for kids to do and like hang out with each other. We don't even have like a climbing frame that looks realistic to a back garden. More meaningful sentiments that affect Sims' abilities to build relationships. This is a hill I have died on since sentiments were introduced. Sentiments still don't feel like they do anything to me. It doesn't make your Sims relationships like harder to get up. I know I've dogged on Love Struck like an awful lot, and I still don't think it's like the strongest expansion. It's not really what I wanted from a romance expansion, but at least in some ways it did make having a romance harder. A lot of the time you can kind of just like plow through it with sheer force, but sometimes it does make your Sims think, is this the person for me? Whereas I feel like sentiments don't do that. Growing together dynamics actually do more than sentiments ever could, and I just think that sentiments need a really big update. I've always said, but they should work like the Sims 2 Fury system. A hobbies pack that covers every age group would definitely make the game better. You all already know that I would love a hobbies pack. Could be a set of hobbies for each age group. Children can do karate, ballet. I think that they could definitely add to scouts and maybe tie that into outdoor retreat if you have it. There's a ton of clubs that I would add for children. Teens could have skateboarding, bands. I kind of want bands as their own separate pack, but anyway. Elders, bingo, some hobbies that cover many age groups, bands, and a lot of careers. I just think there are so many hobbies that they could add into this game. I I love having hobbies that actually allow your sim to have a career and they can work from home and they can work at their own times. I love painting for that reason. I love gardening for that reason. And I just think that they could do so much more with hobbies and careers. I think they could have talents and skills, which means that the skills go up higher. They could also set limits for things that you were kind of untalented in, or if you didn't want a sim to like be good at cooking ever, because right now their skill just goes up and up and up until they hit level 10. I would love it if you could just stop their cooking from going up to like level 3 or whatever you choose. Speaking of all ages, this one was quite interesting. Obviously, fix neighborhood stories, add more to neighborhood stories. Sims should be able to get married, divorce, transform into adults, become humans. There's a lot that they could add to manage worlds, and that's something that I personally stated in my wish list. But also, I want more control when it comes to aging. This is something that I've never really thought about. Obviously, in The Sims 3, they had sliders for how many days you wanted certain Sims to be at that age. Whereas in The Sims 4, you can only choose short, normal, or long. So I would love to have those custom sliders. But also, this person says, want to be able to say which household can age up on their own, which can't. They could integrate this with neighborhood stories. Right now, it's like a blanket of the Sims in your household section of Manage Worlds can or can't age up. Everybody else either can or can't age up. And that's just like a blanket statement depending on which tab you have them in Manage Households. I think it would be so cool to be able to go into Manage Households and be like, I don't want this certain family to age, or maybe even Sims. And I also think that opens it up to being able to tell stories like romance or create friendships with townies, because you know exactly when they're gonna age up and it just wouldn't be as much of a faff for players. This one was wild to read, considering I and so many of you always talk about gameplay needing to be more realistic, like we need more stuff for gameplay. And then I'm like, oh yeah, Create a Sim and Build Mode also exist. Now, Create a Sim, there's a ton of things that I had on my own personal wish list for Create a Sim, but this person was actually just like, I'm gonna list off Build Mode stuff. More kitchen counters, more mirrors, more normal looking toilets and showers, more dining tables and chairs, less gameplay focused options. Now, I could not disagree more. I feel like gameplay is still extremely lacking, and I always want more new gameplay focused options. I honestly sometimes think that build and buy is the strongest area of Sims 4. It's just an interesting reminder that everyone plays this game differently and everyone has their own wants and things that they don't want to see. This one absolutely struck a chord with me because this is something that I would also love in Build and Buy mode, but update that changes the swatch system to one more like The Sims 2, where you could basically change the wood swatch of an item. So let's say bed frame is the best way to understand this, but you could choose the bed frame that you wanted and you could choose the wood tone that you wanted on that bed frame, but then you could change like the mattress and the bedding separately. Oh my goodness, I would absolutely love it. Realistically, it is going to be a lot of work and I don't know if they ever would do it, but I would love it if The Sims 4 worked in that way. Disabilities, bro, just add some goddamn mobility aids and animations. I could not agree more. Again, I know a lot of people would say that would be a lot of work with having Sims route differently and also like adding ramps and stuff to build, but I think it should be an option, and I think this should be an option that has been in this game for a long while, and unfortunately it's still not there. And I would love 2025 to be the year that actually starts to happen and we start to get a shift on more disability representation. When it comes to representation, I wanted more hijabs, niqabs, burqas, etc. for the longest time. It would be great free Create a Sim update. I absolutely agree. I think there is not enough representation when it comes to any of those things within the game. So I would absolutely love to see that in a free update. Finally, something that I'm shocked that I've never seen more people mention when I've asked for once, but I do know a lot of people request it or like play with mods that allow you to do this. And it's a simple hope that EA will release a dark mode and modernize the UI for Sims 4. My eyes are really hurting with the white color. Sometimes the UI needs to be a little refreshed to be more new. There are a lot of things that I would change about like how the UI works or how certain panel works. I think that we should have more customization in general when it comes to how our UI looks and how like a lot of like the Simology panel works, and you should be able to pin certain things that you want to see for certain sims, but that's a video topic for another day. I can't believe that we don't have dark mode. It feels like so many simmers that I see playing this game on YouTube and Twitch play it with dark mode. But there we have it. Those are all of your thoughts, your wants, your wishes for 2025. Thank you all so much for absolutely popping off in my replies. I think this honestly may have got more attention than like any other. In like a day, I got inundated with responses to what you lot wanted to see, and that really does show that there's a lot still missing from this game, and that a lot of people want a ton of different things. Main being more updates, more fixes, more bug fixes, more pack refreshes, anything to make this game feel like it can last for as long as EA, I feel, want it to last. Because right now, the quality for not having a successor is not currently there in The Sims 4, but I would love this conversation to continue down in the comments below. I absolutely love reading your responses to these types of videos, seeing what you lot would love to see in the new year. We did actually get a couple more surveys this year that I wasn't actually expecting. I love when they run surveys for The Sims 4. I love having my say in like pack ideas, and I feel like it's a cool way to be able to see if they kind of have tabs on the community and what the community is currently talking about and like requesting when it comes to new content or fixing old content, which unfortunately there hasn't been that many surveys about, other than like the feedback of like, hey, we see that you have this pack and we want your feedback about it. But thank you all so much for sending your submissions for this one. I appreciate you all very much. I hope 2025 is good to you. I hope that it brings everything that you want to the game. I appreciate you always, and I will speak to you all in my next one. Bye now.